Good evening, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day and all that happy horse stuff. This is Steve with Real Progressives. I truly had no idea that I would be going on live tonight. I thought I would be watching TV and taking the night off, but everybody went to sleep. And then I got tagged and told, hey guys, Steve, Jill Stein's talking about MMT. And I'm thinking to myself, that's a pretty big deal right there. If that's really what's going on, I need to do a little bit more research. Well, one of our good friends here went ahead and took the relevant clip and cut it out for us. So what I'm going to do here momentarily is allow you an opportunity to hear what Jill Stein had to say about MMT. And then I'm going to give you an explanation of what she may have gotten wrong a little bit. So give me 1 second here to cue this up. And I'm going to go here.
Tell us how you would pay for a Green New Deal. MMT is the only way. So MMT is certainly a great way to pay for it. And modern monetary theory, in short, is one way to basically generate the money, because at the end of the day, money is a social contract. So we should be able to generate it. And in fact, we have that power in the Constitution that gives Congress essentially the right to do that. Unfortunately, Congress gave it away to the private banks in the form of the Federal Reserve, but we could reclaim it. And we should. In the meantime, the Green New Deal basically pays for itself because we get so much healthier by eliminating the pollution and the fossil fuels and the heart disease and the depression and the strokes and diabetes and emphysema and cancer and birth defects and a whole slew of problems that are increasingly related. As the science gets better, we see that air pollution has all these amazing problems. So yes, we can fix this. And a Green New Deal pays for itself only by looking at the actual health savings. In addition, there are savings in preventing the destruction of the environment and our jobs and all the rest. And savings in the wars for oil, how the U.S. just occupied the oil regions of Syria. Okay, so if we have 100% clean renewable energy, we don't need the friggin' wars for oil. So that's another way that this pays for itself.
All right. I'm going to try my best to be very delicate because I love Jill. I think she's a great person. I've met her a bunch of times. I voted for her. I know that unfortunately many people in the Green Party, when they see people critique their heroes and stuff, literally lose their minds, are incapable of dealing with any critique. And I understand that. I do. I don't agree with it. I find it shallow, thimble deep, but that's what some people do. And you see that with Bernie Sanders supporters as well. They're as incapable of taking critique as anybody you've ever met. And it's embarrassing. I'm not going to lie. But here's the deal. The Federal Reserve did not ride into the United States, take the United States over by storm. The Federal Reserve came to be with a law passed by Congress to be our nation's central bank. Congress is not a central bank, okay? England has a Federal Reserve of its own, the Bank of England. Japan has a Federal Reserve of its own, the Bank of Japan. Australia has a Federal Reserve of its own. So does Russia. So does China. Every one of these countries has its own version of the Federal Reserve. Thank God every country doesn't have a Tales from the Fire pit that tries to make you scared to spend money by believing it's the private banksters. Okay? This is Alex Jones level stuff. And this is what the American Monetary Institute preaches, which is the Green Party's national platform called AMI, greening the dollar, democratizing the dollar, etc. And it's all founded in charlatan speak, snake oil. And unfortunately, what you heard there, so we're all on the same page, they can't figure out how Congress can spend $700 billion without savings on the military, but we're going to go ahead and find savings to pay for a Green New Deal. I'm struggling with my decorum here because it's very frustrating to support the Green Party and progressives in general, and to have people have this obvious miss, this big miss, this monstrosity of a miss. The same money that we use to bomb the hell out of the world is the same money that we could use to save our country and save our environment and save your children who have autism and give them help, and to do R&D to save all those people with cancer and to save our environment. All of it. Right now, Congress didn't give up anything. When Congress says spend, the Federal Reserve makes keystroke deposits into the Treasury's account, and it spends. It's that simple. Congress didn't strike Article 1, Section 8 that gives it the power. It just simply went ahead and created a central bank like every other modern country in the world. We're not unique. And it's time we stop pretending like you have to suffer until they decide that they can end the Fed and, kill capitalism and all these other things. And then, and only then, can we do really great things. And this has been my problem with David Cobb. You talk to David Cobb and you're like, David, I want a Green New Deal more than you want a Green New Deal, brother. How are we going to pay for it? I can tell you how we're going to pay for it. Well, no, Steve, we gotta green the dollar. AMI, here's this link. Read this link. And I'm like, okay, well, I read your link. And it's talking about a fractional reserve system. Well, the fractional reserve system ended when the gold standard ended back in 1934. There is no fractional reserve system. Banks don't lend reserves. Reserves stay in the banking system. They're there just to help clear payments. But what about the debt? The debt is nothing but sales of treasury bills. When you go to your bank, do you think your bank is going to go bankrupt because you have a savings account at your bank? I mean, Do you think your bank is going bankrupt because you have a savings account at your bank? So why in the world would the United States go broke when other countries take their existing US dollars and deposit them into treasuries? We're not borrowing their money. That's not how this game works. It's tomfoolery. It's ridiculous. You worry about how a Congress critter or a senator or a potential presidential candidate could not know any better than this. This is the myths and legends that you hear me rail against constantly. She talked about the savings and all the health benefits. Well, guess what? All the savings and the health benefits exist by using our current system. See, the idea that MMT is a way to pay for it shows that she doesn't know what MMT is. And it shows at the highest levels of the Green Party, she doesn't know what the MMT is. Then that tells you the rest of them don't know what MMT is. MMT is not something to be implemented. It's not something we could use in an occasion. MMT is a description, literal, a scientific, archaeological description, a forensic description of how our monetary system actually works. It's got nothing to do with something we might implement. It's nothing to do with well, that's a theory, isn't it? That's certainly something to contemplate over a nice cold brew by the fire pit. Let's have a chat about this at the fire pit. Chauncey, get me one of those Schlitz malt liquor bowls, please. Now, MMT is a description of exactly the mechanisms that go forward to make a federal bill go through. Now, I'm going to show you something. This right here is a very important diagram. I want you all to understand something. This is ridiculously important. You're going to notice that there's a period of time there where the wealth gap grows insanely. And you're going to also notice that there's a significant raise in the wealth gap before that middle dividing line where they try to put it on Ronnie Reagan, who is definitely the master blaster, okay, of destroying equality. But if you look back just a scant few years before the white line, you realize, oh my God, that's when we got off the Bretton Woods Accord. Gadzooks, Batman. Let me tell you, since that point in time, the wealthy in this country have benefited insanely from our ignorance. From our ignorance, we have allowed this to happen. And what happened? Milton Friedman told everybody that if the government spends, or if it prints money, okay, that we're going to have inflation. Well, we can't get an ounce of inflation. This is the sucky thing. You may see things like college has gone up and this has gone up, but overall, we got next to no inflation because our buying power has largely risen in tune with the costs, etc. Even though it hurts, even though it sucks, even though it feels bad, and it does, buddy, it's horrible. But the reality is that we can't crack any inflation. Inflation has stayed static for a very, very long time, but the wealth gap has not. As you see, the wealth gap is spiking right through the roof. And the reason for this is because Milton Friedman made every politician and every political party and all of Wall Street and everyone else tremble in fear of inflation, about printing money, about printing money. What are you going to do, print more money? You going to print more money? And what they've done is, as they've scared the shit out of the proletariat, we have allowed them to simultaneously fill their wallets full of money while we have to go to a private bankster. There you go, a private bankster. We've had to go to a private bankster to survive the ebbs and flows of the economy so that we can stay afloat and pay our electric bill, going to payday lenders, going to, god awful, crap, situations that have literally left us each destitute. And what is happening? We have allowed people to explain this phenomenon away. We've allowed them to say that the reason our world is so screwed up is the private banksters. Now, let me tell you something. The private banksters should have cement shoes, and they should be trolling the bottom of the ocean. But they are not the cause any more than Donald Trump is the cause. They are allowed to be what they are because Congress has forsaken its right to spend on the people. We've allowed them to play debt and deficit games that you are suddenly seeing right now. The veil has been lifted, and we realize that it's a bunch of bullshit. We realize you got to have a noodle and you got to have a working, organ called a brain to process this. But the reality is we have stopped spending on the people and have pushed the people to private debt. And guess what happens when we go to private debt? This wealth gap continues to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. Okay? Because we are paying interest and the wealthy are collecting our interest payments on their yacht as they sip their Grand Marnier and smoke their cohibas. We are sitting there unable to pay our electric bills. We're unable to pay our mortgages. And we end up committing suicide because of untenable student loans. Which brings me to the next point. Dr. Kelton and the Levy Institute, Scott Fulweiler, Marshall Steinbaum, wrote a remarkable paper, a study, on how eradicating the $1.4 trillion in student debt would be the biggest boon for the economy. Well, unfortunately, the Green Party has said we're going to do QE for the 99%. That's not the way it works. Again, not the way it works. I support full-throated support student debt elimination, but the fact is that it's the MMT way that gets it done. It's not this, well, someday when we take back our sovereign currency from the private banksters, someday, some far off day, until then, we'll have to survive on not getting cancer and being happy, being, smiling a lot more. We'll pay for it. We'll pay for it in smiles. Ding. Folks, this is the stuff when I look at my autistic son, I lose my shit because I'm not waiting for you to end the private banksters and all the other things that you want to do before you start saving the first life. Not willing. And there's no reason for it. There's no reason for it. Let me tell you, Rohan Gray went to Minnesota, spoke at the Democracy Convention with the public banking and the AMI gang. Smoked them, did phenomenally, laid out the most cogent case for smart economics you've ever heard in your life. They like the AMI thing better that tells you we're going to end the Fed and we're going to do this and we're going to democratize the dollar. We're going to end private lending. There's not going to be any more commercial banks. We're not going to be able to get a loan anymore. all this crazy stuff. Well, full reserve banking. He smoked them. Then they wanted to have a debate. So David Cobb came to me, and I went and got Warren Mosler, who sat there and debated with two people who I was almost embarrassed for him to sit there in a debate with. Warren Mosler handled himself like a true gentleman. Warren Mosler is a billionaire, is a man that owned banks, but is a man that has a heart for the people and wants people to understand how the economy actually works and how the banking system that he actually knows about runs and works. Warren's made his money. He's not in it for the money. He's in it because this is truth. And he sat there like a champ as he was cut off in the middle of his sentences. And he just took it like a gentleman. I went to New Jersey to the Green Party annual national meeting. I spent an incredible amount of time and money trying to pull this off because I had incredibly high hopes that the Green Party would adopt these truths so that they could, in fact, have a Green New Deal, which we all desperately need. The leadership was out in the hallway. They didn't want to come in. They didn't listen. As I walked in, they literally stood up and walked out. And some of the AMI people at the end of the thing tried to rush us out of the room. Now, the new guard, the young guard, has been listening. There are people in Nebraska. There are people in Texas. There are people in New Jersey. There are people in Pennsylvania that asked me to run for office as an MMT Green, by the way. There are many of them that are learning and are pushing up. Ellis Winningham and I had a conversation with David Cobb on the phone. Ellis tried to break this down to him, explain it to him. The answer, this isn't a very good sales pitch. We're with AMI. Okay. I don't get a nickel. There is no MMT area where they just send money to people that talk about it on YouTube channels and Facebook live streams. Now, my family's sleeping upstairs while I'm doing this. There's no incentive to get rich talking about this. I know my child needs these services. So my only motive is conviction of truth and righteousness and trying to save our children. I like the Green Party. I like Jill Stein a lot. I want you to know this. I like her a lot. But she is not someone I would go to for macroeconomic advice. And the people she has surrounded herself with, I don't think I would ask for macroeconomic advice. And if the top of the leadership team over there at the Green Party isn't willing to hear how to pay for a Green New Deal, then I'll work from the bottom up and I'll make it happen. Because I'm tired of recalcitrant behavior towards economic truth that saves lives. See, here's the thing. MMT is not political at all. There's no political anything about MMT. Nothing is political about MMT. MMT is like studying the frozen caveman. You look at it, this is what it does, there you go. There is no politics in MMT. The difference here, what is political, is that progressives have forever not been able to answer the question of how you're going to pay for it. Ever been able to answer the question, how are you going to pay for it? And so we have all languished as centrists and Republicans pull together and continue the rightward shift, because the left can't get out of its own way and tell you how it's going to pay for a goddamn Green New Deal. Now, some of you guys may not care whether we ever have a New Deal. Maybe you have given up on life. Maybe you've got the give up haircut. Maybe you got the give up jeans. But as for me and my house, I haven't given up. And you may say this haircut is a give up haircut, and I can't say I'd fault you for it. But I can tell you right now, the sparks are firing between the ears. I've done my homework. I'm ready. I'm tan, rested, and ready to run for the office of President of the United States. If the answer is just, how do you pay for it? I can answer it in spades. And I don't need to sell you any fibs or lies or what someone told me once. No tales from the fire pit for me. I am a myth slayer. I refuse to allow a single myth any truck in my life. You bring a myth my way, I break out a saber-toothed tiger and have it devour it for lunch. That's the deal. I do not allow that kind of nonsense to enter in the game. Why is this so important? Let me ask you guys. Think about this. Why is this so damn important? They have been lying to us every time they cut food stamps. Every time they can't give us a COLA raise for Social Security. Every time they try and act like Social Security is broke. Every time they allow us to languish in an environment that is crumbling before our eyes. Now, if the Green Party's serious and they really do want to save the environment, then they're going to understand that the myth and the legend of the Federal Reserve must end now. Now, not yesterday. 100 years. It should have never happened. There should be no myths and legends in existence today. If you want to rail on religion, rail on the religion of myths and legends. This is a religion we can get rid of quick. Because people are going to die because of this bullshit. Okay? Right here, right now. When Congress authorizes a bill, it sends instructions in that bill. Those instructions go to the Fed. The Fed keystrokes deposits into the Treasury's accounts. The Treasury then spends that into existence out of thin air. Then they tax a little bit of it back or a lot of it back, depending on who's in power. And that money is deleted from the economy. It's a circuit, folks. New money is spent into the economy. Old money is deleted out of the economy. If you don't spend enough back into the economy, but delete too much, like a surplus, well, the negative, the deficit is on you and me. It's on the economy, the working economy that we live in. There is no raiding the military to pay for health care. That might be a political choice that you want to cut the military, and I support that. But you sure as hell better move that money. You don't just cut that money. You better move that money. Because I can tell you right now, the reason why recessions come is not because business has had a bad year. Recessions come because there's not enough government spending. Deficits keep us out of recession. So why in the world would Jill say that we can't do a Green New Deal by spending on it today because of the private banksters? That's a page out of Alex Jones' book. That's not a page out of Stephanie Kelton's book. It's not a page out of economically literate people's book. That's a page out of a conspiracy novel, a James Bond novel. And it's not one that's going to save our lives or our children's lives or our environment. We have gotten to a point now where we can ill afford the lies of the right wing and the left wing and the center. We must eradicate all myths and legends, and we must do whatever it takes by any means necessary to shut down the lies. You want to talk about fake news? I'll tell you what fake news is. The creature from Jekyll Isle, and the Fed crew. If you don't understand that presidents nominate neoliberals to the Fed, so the Fed does neoliberal things. When you want to have progressive things done, you must have progressive people appointing progressive people to do progressive things. If you want to have this wonderful future with infrastructure, green energy, free college, you name it, you must join forces and march and take this fight to Congress and let them know, even if it's rigged, even if they're bought and paid for, even if it's not the guy you want in office, it doesn't matter. They can't handle social unrest. They can't handle a people ready to say, I know what the hell you're doing. They laugh when they hear you make up stories. They laugh. They know you're not on the right track. They're not trembling in their boots when you talk about the private banksters and the private Federal Reserve. They're not quaking in their boots. They know they got you because they know you don't know what you're talking about. They're laughing at you. They are literally laughing at you. They're laughing at us because we then are inept to fight back. So let me recap. All the benefits of a Green New Deal that Jill brought around, getting rid of brain cancer. Pretty noble idea. I'm down with it. Not sure it pays for a Green New Deal, but I'm still down with it. Having an environment that is healthy for us to live in, saved. That's great, man. That's kick ass. Still not paying for a Green New Deal. The idea that we're all happy, that might increase productivity a lick for the capitalists, but I can tell you right now, it's not paying for a Green New Deal. The only way a Green New Deal is coming to be is not talking about ending the Fed, eliminating private credit, doing all this nonsense. No, the only way that a Green New Deal is coming to pass is if we apply enough pressure on these people we despise in Congress and in the White House. And we demand, just like the hippies did when Nixon was in there and they got the EPA, just like when they stopped the Vietnam War. Folks, I'm telling you right now, it's up to us to make it so that no candidate gets elected without harassment, to make them acknowledge a Green New Deal and how they're going to pay for it through modern monetary theory, or that they've taken the CFAR pledge. Okay? But these are the things that must be done. And talking about how we are powerless until Congress voluntarily, if Congress is so powerless, how in the world could they end the Fed? Just spitballing, baby. Just spitballing. It's up to us to hold Jill Stein, Barack, all of them. I love Ajamu, one of the nicest men you'll ever meet. Very, very kind man. And a great social revolutionary. But if he doesn't get this, we got to hold him accountable too. And if David Cobb comes back and goes, well, Green Party, we support AMI. We support green and dollar. We got to end that fractional reserve system. You just remind them that ended in 1934, baby. It's time for you to acknowledge you're wrong so that we can save lives. These are the things that make the Green Party look like they're full of kooks. And that's a problem because they've got great policies. They've got good people, young people trying to make a difference. Why spoil it with myths and legends from the fire pit about our economic system that is destroying their viability and, by extension, our hope? I'm not giving you an ideology. I'm literally telling you how it is. This is not some theory or some alternative way. This is exactly how a sovereign free-floating currency of the fiat variety works in Japan, who has a 250% debt to GDP ratio. They don't have a standing army and an empire to defend, and they have no petro yen. So all you snapperheads that talk that stuff, get a clue, man. Get a clue. We are exporting privatization and neoliberalism all over the world. They're fighting tooth and nail in England to keep the privateers from destroying the social safety nets. The same in Australia. The same all over. You look at Russia. Russia, they may have been bad leaders or whatever, but those people had a better life prior to the great freedom they won to go become neoliberals. Now the privatizing bullshit in Russia is destroying their lives too. It's time for a change, but the change is to wake up and stop telling stupid James Bond stories that make you feel, freaking excited and alive. God, this is so exciting. It's like tingling on my lips to tell the story. It's like spicy language. I mean, guys, the story may be more boring than you want it to be, but I can tell you right now, if you cut the bullshit out, the same exact mass movement that it will take to end corruption, to fix our elections, and to get a Green New Deal are all contingent on the same exact thing, and that is a mass movement. And you know what? If we have 3 demands, I'm down. Fix our elections. End corruption. And stop with the bullshit fucking conspiracies about our financial monetary system. And spend on the people right now. You want to see a successful mass movement? 3 bullet points, baby. That's pretty damn easy. You could have 3 bumper stickers on the back of your car. End corruption, fair elections, MMT. Bam! There's your 3-banger. Well, we gotta green the dollar. We gotta do all these things, man. We gotta do all these things. Man, we gotta do some extra things before we can save our first life. Well, it's important stuff. Folks, you're smarter than this and you've been exposed to it. It's time to do better. It's time to do better. Demand better. So I'm going to put one final thing up here for you folks. And I'm out of here. My name's Steve Grumbine. I'm with Real Progressives, asking you to hold your elected officials and those who would aspire to be leaders accountable for telling you myths and legends. Here's the thing.